This is a Campus Sonar case study on social intelligence informed strategic communications with Duquesne University. This is about a 2-year partnership where social insights from social media and online forums are helping to inform data-led decision-making in the cabinet. And that's uniting leaders across their messaging, and it's creating an advanced awareness of potential emerging crises between campus leaders on campus. My name's Alistair Hayes, and I'm the marketing director at Campus Sonar. And I'm joined today by Gabe Welsh, who is Duquesne University's VP of Communications and Marketing, and Caitlin Swisher, who's Campus Sonar's very own senior strategist for the project. Now, leading communications at universities is a huge challenge, and coming up with the right things to say at the right time with the right tone can be extremely difficult for senior leaders. And that means that universities like Duquesne are trying to manage communications from multiple colleges and schools. Trying to build that communication so that everybody is in sync can be such a challenge at times. And creating that culture of internal collaboration between leaders, all vying for the attention of audiences at the same time, means that building those relationships between those campus leaders is really a key element of the work that Gabe is trying to do. Now, on top of that, as an extra layer, is the cabinet communications that Gabe is working on. And it's really key for leaders to create messaging that resonates with their students, alumni, and donors so that they can cut through the noise and make sure that they're bringing the right messages at the right times to their audiences. So Gabe, just to start, does that sound right to you?
Yes, Alistair, it does sound familiar. And I'm reminded of its importance every time I think about the investment we've made in brand alignment, in consistent messaging, and now having the ability to listen to see how that message is resonating and addressing when there's a perception that we've gone astray, or on those rare occasions when we actually have gone astray.
Yes, that's right. So social intelligence really is about understanding and listening to those online conversations on social media and forums so that we can kind of take out those mentions and insights that really matter to colleges and to the leaders that we work with. So that means that using a team of analysts and strategists to decode those messages and conversations really does help sort of bring out the relevance of those messages that can build better consensus across the communications that we know that the university leaders are working on right now. So Duquesne specifically is using social listening insights to mitigate those risks before incidents arise. They're balancing those cabinet reactions to some of those risks so that they shape the messaging before reacting to a potential news story. And so we provide, Campus Sonar specifically, provides that independent perspective on issues and news stories as they come up throughout the year. And this, for Gabe, is great because it means that he can build that culture of collaboration between departments and leaders so that they can produce communications that really does resonate with the audiences that they're looking to reach.
Building on what you've observed so far, Alistair, about the consistent research, independent perspective, and understanding your audiences. Duquesne is located in a city that has 3 active newspapers, 2 active news radio stations, one of the largest and most staunch television viewing demographics in the country that regularly still watches the evening news, as well as a variety of online news sources, in addition to the usual social media accounts and presence of various things. Not only does understanding the resonance of our message and what's going out there, understanding risk in the media landscape, we're usually monitoring to see how it's taking off in different directions. So the other benefit here is not only understanding a complex ecosystem like that for media and social media, but then building the trust in order to overcome silos with senior administrators, with faculty who occasionally find themselves maybe swept up in something controversial, students who may be swept up into something. It helps us help our public safety team. So by having this kind of research and having this kind of access to immediate insights particularly if we need to get something on the ground fast, in addition to whatever monthly report we may have. We really have the ability to build trust, make a consistent voice, avoid issues ballooning into crises. And then the next time that we have to give someone advice on something a little more germane or a little more mundane, we still have that trust backing and that knowledge backing to work with.
Now, I guess we're all getting ready to get started. So I'm going to pass this over to Caitlin and Gabe to talk through the case study. Caitlin, would you like to take it away?
So we are in the midst of a 2-year strategic partnership with Duquesne University's Division of Marketing and Communications. This is a team that is brimming with expertise, creativity, and commitment. They're working to build brand alignment and data-informed Marcom strategies to not only expand their strategic capacity within their team, but to help build trust across campus as they work together and collaborate more effectively. They're continuing to help their senior leaders understand the impact that online conversation through social and earned news media has on their overarching campus brand, reputation, engagement, and sentiment, and how that all works together to shape their overall brand health and ultimately contribute to their goals. So next up, we're going to talk through some of their different goals that they have for the work they're doing on campus, and then ways that our partnership is actively supporting them. So our first goal is really right at the start. It's to assess and improve the campus's brand alignment. Through this goal, we started off by kicking off our partnership with an audit of everything that they had from an online presence that related back to their social media. This helped the team from the start really understand the current landscape of their social media presence. It helped them identify dormant or maybe off-brand accounts, and then supported their efforts to work toward overcoming that brand fragmentation, including guiding their academic units and the leadership of those academic units to really progress toward a more cohesive approach to that online presence. Through this audit, we ended up identifying 740 accounts. Of those, more than half at the time were inactive, which was an immediate opportunity for the team to take some initiative, take some notes of those institutional accounts that had opportunities for either reactivation, growth, or maybe even sunsetting, and really connect with those individuals and collaborate on ways to make progress toward a more cohesive presence. Because anytime your audiences are searching for those accounts, there's so many opportunities to either connect directly or maybe have confusion if there's not a clear connection back to the campus. We also found really interesting that more than half of them were student run, which showcases a really engaged and active student body that is committed to having that online presence for their student organizations, for their activities, which really for us showcased and celebrated the student life on the campus. And the identification of these accounts really has a lot of opportunities for ongoing student organization collaborations, possibly through a social media directory, collaboration with those teams on different strategies, maybe trainings for the account managers, and most importantly, ways to leverage those student voices in their online conversation and really bring to life those voices who represent the campus. Another way that we're supporting the Duquesne team through this goal is through our monthly insights reports. These are identifying brand-aligned strategies that the team's using across their channels to best reach their audiences, and then encourage their campus-wide communicators to share those stories and put into place those best practices. And then we really bring all this to life through active conversations, synchronous strategy sessions where we talk through with the team what we're finding in those data points, in those insights, and really dive into specific topics that are of interest to the team that they hope to learn more about, as well as to share out with others. These strategy sessions are opportunities to really empower the Division of Marketing and Communications to take what they're learning and share out with others and really empower them to bring a cohesive approach to marketing communication strategy across the entire campus. Some recent examples included a forum monitoring strategy session that really connected one-to-one perspectives from incoming students, admitted students, prospective students, and their families to see what are those key things that they're talking about as it relates to their admissions process and what they hope to achieve as students, and then passing on that social intelligence to others across campus who it's helping. Another example is an assessment of institutional content to really see where are those opportunities for optimization of content curation and creation best practices, as well as really aligning with that brand voice. And then we turned that into a session across the entire campus communication team, really bringing everybody together in one room or even one room virtually as well to have a really thoughtful conversation about the importance of brand voice. So those are just a few of the ways that we're helping to make progress on assessing and improving brand alignment with a really engaged team from Duquesne. And would love to hear more from you, Gabe, about the conversations you've had to date across brand alignment and really different ways you've counseled different leaders on campus about the importance of this at Duquesne.
Well, thanks for asking. And in fact, going back to the all-campus communicators session that you recently have, I think was a week or two ago, I heard a lot of good feedback about that from deans who had heard from their communicators. We saw during the session a lot of the communicators and they were happy about it. This is the time of year, 3 times a year I go and I have a sort of an open, no agenda, what's on your mind meeting with each dean of our academic areas. They're usually pretty productive. We talk about a variety of things. And in the last 18 months or so, as we've been more planful with our overall strategic communications and marketing plans for the school, items that we've taken from the insights from the reports or from our work with Campus Sonar have made their way into those plans, but also in the discussions with the deans. Recent ones, in fact, included appreciation for when we encourage them to do some of that one-on-one engagement with comments and the like on their pages. Or they had a web page maybe that didn't have a lot of student stories, but their social had all kinds of student stories, and the best performing ones, we said, why don't we just take those and put them on the website too? And so sort of being more thoughtful around their content from the academic dean side of things. Similarly, as we are working for a leadership transition in our student life area, talking with those folks about sort of the art of the possible and better understanding what's going on with our clubs and organizations and how they're performing. And then, of course, I think we'll talk later about cabinet discussions about large-scale issues management or opportunities or impact planning and that sort of thing. So I'll keep my powder dry for that one. But those are some of the recent conversations that we've had around the value of data, engagement, and best practices in social media.
Excellent. Well, that leads in really nicely to our next goal, which is around helping campus leaders understand how online conversation reflects and contributes to brand health. So really bringing it to those key decision makers and how data can inform the decisions being made on campus. And that's certainly something that the monthly insights are really empowering the team to do, making those connections between online conversation, how that's really shaping brand reputation, brand awareness, and regularly offering up those relevant examples of how that's reflected in your conversation. And one of the ways that you can really see that in the reporting that we do is by our probably most impactful brand health awareness metric, which is conversation volume. We typically measure that by month for our campus partners to have an opportunity to compare over time to benchmarks. And we put together this visual for the Duquesne team so that they can see that over time, what that's looked like since we first kicked things off back in 2022. And one of the things that has stood out to me and the fantastic team from Campus Sonar that's working with the Duquesne team is how strong Duquesne's brand awareness actually is. This is really evident from looking at that monthly volume in comparison to our benchmarks, which when we talk about benchmarking the different campus conversations, we do that based on enrollment size. And looking here, the Duquesne conversation volume is represented in blue. The monthly benchmark is represented in red. And the Duquesne team consistently sees substantially higher levels of conversation volume than what you would typically see for similarly sized campuses. So that really stands out to us as a strong reflection of the Division of Marketing Communications work on elevating the brand and what that looks like. So leading into our next goal, which is around supporting data-informed decision-making, One of the things that we really want to highlight in this area is how these insights are taken to the people who need to hear them and how information is shared. And this is something, Gabe, I know you and the team are actively doing across all levels of the organization, all different levels of leadership, as well as with the campus communicator group. So I'd love to hear some examples from you about what this looks like in real time, different examples of maybe reports you shared, different opportunities to highlight both the great things that are happening on campus, as well as ways that you've navigated some challenges. And one great thing that I know just happened on campus was the announcement of your new medical school just this past month. So I think we've got some opportunities we can talk about with that example to start things off.
Absolutely. And I think I'll start with that success story and work back. I used to joke that as a marketer, you knew that your work was going well when the CFO used brand language. That happened for us a couple of years ago, and I was appreciative of that. But the most recent example was we've been doing this reporting for a while, and I'll talk about some specific examples that have shown the value. But when we did this medical school launch, we did it a couple of weeks before we're having a meeting of our board of directors. As we were preparing for that meeting, having just had the ribbon cutting, the president turned to me during the meeting and said, I want to make sure we have one of those reports on all the social activity. It's already in the book, Chief. It's already there. But the fact that he asked for and expected and knew we could deliver a full spectrum of the impact of that day when we did the ribbon cutting, and it was substantial. We hit 130,000 different accounts that day on social media alone. The press span was enormous. We had a conversation volume of around 216 mentions, which is pretty high. And our core mentions there, which is a term I'll let y'all explicate, being sort of those mentions that are closest to you. We had 47 in one day. Well, what does that number mean in context? The entire month of October previously had 904 core mentions for the month. And October, of course, is one of your busiest months in higher ed. So in deepest, darkest, coldest, it was 6 degrees that day, January, we had this enormous conversation volume that came out across all channels, and the sentiment on it was very positive. So we're going to have a great story to tell the board about the impact for news and reputation of this academic venture, and of course their generosity philanthropically that made it happen, all the alignment of all the different schools. So we'll be able to tell that story, but I think more importantly to this conversation, the board and the president knew to ask for that information because we've shown it previously. Now, some of the decision-making examples that have led up to this are less celebratory, right? We had a couple of different controversies over recent years. And without going into too many details for a variety of reasons, we had one controversy that happened around a sort of a faculty misconduct element. The individual used a slur in a classroom. It was caught on video, and it blew up in traditional media. On social media, we learned it didn't make a whole lot of noise. At the same time, we had a protester who was protesting something on our campus that the local media, after the first flush, didn't really care about. The story had lost its interest, but social media was taking off. This person was gathering followers and so on and so forth. And forgive me for being a little bit vague, but given these details and given that this is a podcast, I'm going to be a little bit vague. But as both of those things were occurring within a relatively short amount of time in the major media market that I described earlier, there was a lot of concern, particularly among leadership here and board members who all read local media, that one crisis was the more important crisis, the one that was appearing in the papers and on TV, although for a short time, very intensively, and the other one wasn't important, even though on social media to our target sales demographic, it could do reputational harm. It wasn't until we could put in front of them, look, this is what's happening on social, and this is what's happening in traditional media. And these are two different stories that are going to require two different approaches. When we did that, it was like a light bulb went off for many of us, not just for leadership, but even for the marketing team to say, okay, we're going to need to change our tactics, do the messaging work that we know works best for this mode or that mode, be on brand, and then watch and see what happens. And so it helped us to make sure that we were responding responsibly, we weren't over-engaging or under-engaging, and that we were doing appropriate damage control, and even beyond that, looking for opportunities to strengthen the perception of the university based on our ability to react to this criticism or these situations or this behavior. So as a result of that, we had a board meeting talking about soon after the effect of those two, and we were called upon to present how we knew how to handle which crisis in what way and what sort of data that we had. And as a result, now it is a standing part of my report to the board of directors and to the cabinet about the media sentiment and media behavior over the previous period since the last report.
And that just shows the incredible work that you've done to build relationships across the cabinet and to really establish the value of this data to inform decision making as well. Those are just some incredible examples that I think many campuses can look to your all's example to follow for how that approach to collaboration works.
So the reports that I just mentioned, this is an example of one from fiscal year 22. And so as you can see, one of the things that we try to do is give the board of directors and cabinet a sense of volume year over year, the value of it and so forth. Some of this we get from Cision, which many PR marketing folks use to know what their earned media reach, mentions, and value is. But at the same time, we know that there are sentiment reporting, some of which we get from Campus Sonar, from its social listening abilities, some of which we get from Cision, to understand where sentiment is going. And in fact, the crises that I referred to earlier had some of our biggest spikes of negative sentiment in traditional and social media that we had ever seen. And so the board wanted to see, have you tamped that down? Are we sort of flooding the zone, so to speak, with positive stories and positive tone? And so we did. But one of the things that we also committed to doing was say, look, if there are anomalous months or anomalous periods, we'll provide some sense of explanation in the report. So as you can see, there's little boxes that talk about different things that may have happened that may have generated a negative mention for us or a positive mention. Similarly, with each social channel, because we knew, so this sort of predated and then went through whatever's going on with Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, as well as the ascendancy of Instagram and then TikTok. And so looking at volume on those areas with our key audiences, what sentiment looks like there, what anomalies may look like. And so we've been trying to follow and make sure that we could communicate on each platform, because not only is it about reputation and brand, but we know that our most engaged alumni pool is on LinkedIn, no longer on Facebook. We know that for our student populations of the social media platforms that do provide us data, Instagram is where we can find the most. So we look at that sentiment to understand what's happening there. In the forums, we watch that through our listening. It doesn't graph well because we can't get a good sentiment graph on that, but we do talk about it sometimes in the paper or in the narrative part of the report. But this way, we're able to talk about sentiment among our populations for different purposes. So it really gives us a deep and wide and sort of complex ability, all in a snapshot, to talk about what's happening with the populations that matter to the university.
And that really leads into, as we think about ways to relay all of this information across campus and help collaborate and share out how to use these insights across different teams, really leads into our final goal of the partnership, which is building strategic marketing capacity across campus. And whether it's sharing out key highlights from these reports, relevant insights and examples to really apply to day-to-day work, that's one key element of this effort. And then also taking those actionable conversations and bringing to life recommendations through live sessions to really just get together and have conversations, not unlike this one, to really talk through different ways that these data points and what we're hearing from audiences, how that can be used to inform strategy is a key part of our collaboration. Something that really stands out to me, having worked with the Duquesne team for a year and a half now, is truly how collaborative they are and their willingness to help each other and work together to find efficiencies and ensure that information is being shared to everybody who needs it. And that's something that, whether it's through a resource, a blog post, one of our live sessions, some of the data points, all these things really work together to help empower folks to find ways to increase efficiencies in their work while also supporting all of their most critical audiences, in particular their students, in the most effective ways possible. Gabe, I wanted to hear a little bit more from you too about maybe some examples you've seen of how your team has been working together or ways that they've maybe collaborated across teams or across units to find increased efficiencies in their work.
So thanks for asking that. One of the things that we did do as we're talking more now, I mean, a lot of places you're working hand in hand with enrollment. And so obviously we've talked with them about being responsive to comments on enrollment pages or helping us to make sure we're responding to any student questions we see come through. We've also started working with our advancement communications team. And in fact, for their channels, looking at what sentiment markers they can be watching in all of this. And so they've generated a report that we discussed just between advancement and marketing about what they're seeing in terms of how their unique alumni groups or subgroups that may exist on LinkedIn or those kinds of places, how they're behaving and what they're saying and hearing. So they're beginning to think a lot about sentiment and what resonates and what doesn't. We're also seeing in our work with student life, as we work in parent communications and then increasingly internal student communications, that's sort of a frontier for us in bringing some of this same kind of insight to them in a more organized way. So that is ahead of us. One of the things, of course, that my position does at a lot of places, your vice president for comms or marketing, is often working on issues in crisis management, crisis communications. And so we regularly have discussions about things we see bubbling or emerging, and this data helps inform that, as well as what we have seen or learned from past practice based on this data to say, okay, how can we improve this kind of response? How can we better engage this kind of constituent? So that's happening as well.
Absolutely. And speaking of your advancement team, I'm really excited. One of our next strategy sessions coming up this spring is going to focus on alumni and donor engagement. So we're actively working with your all's team on scheduling that and planning that out.
Well, that's great. If someone makes a gift early, do they have like a half an hour early in the chat room to, get a...
We'll see what we can do to accommodate that. The final thing I really want to celebrate with the way that your team has been maximizing their capacity and really building trust and sharing expertise across the campus is their efforts related to engagement. You alluded to this briefly earlier, Gabe, but one of the things that has stood out to us is from day one of working with us, one of the things that you all said was a key priority across your team is increasing that one-to-one engagement, both hearing directly from your audiences online, as well as how your team is actively responding to them. This is something we have actively been monitoring for you all, doing regular reporting on to see how these numbers have changed over time. And when I went back and looked, dating back to July of 2022, you all have consistently maintained a monthly engagement rate across both the owned, what you all do, and then also earned the audiences that talk about Duquesne Online, that you've maintained that engagement rate anywhere from 12% of your conversation up to 24% of your conversation in the busiest months. And that just showcases your all's commitment to doing this work. When comparing that proportion of conversation to our benchmarks for similarly sized campuses, it's only 7%. So that really has been something that shows meaning because it reflects the value that you all bring to your work and why you all care so much about interacting with your audiences. When you have an established active community online, your brand awareness is more likely to be stronger. So engaging with those audiences helps increase campus's visibility, their awareness, their affinity, and it really establishes that shared sense of community online. So that really showcases the work that your all's team is doing to have that consistent culture of engagement, and not just with your core team within the Division of Marketing and Communications, but how you are kind of spreading that and encouraging that across all of your campus-wide communicators.
So much credit goes to our chief social media evangelist. That's not his actual title. Ian Hurley, who's our director of social media here, for a couple of reasons. One, when we first had the conversation about this, he and I and Patty Swisher, who's the AVP here, we got it right away. It made all the intuitive sense in the world. I think it was from a paper that you provided. And so fortunately, Ian had already invested a lot of time and effort into making sure that there was a regular social media working group of sort of the chief managers of the largest accounts that we have that were non-central as well as our own. And he started talking about the benefit of doing this and modeling it and so forth. And it is a topic in those sessions that he has, and it's frequently part of his advice. Similarly, we had started making strategic comms plans for each school with a variety of goals and measures that we would look at to say, okay, is the School of Nursing doing this? Is the School of Health Sciences, the School of Education, and so forth? But one of the main recommendations to those places for the people who manage their social media accounts, in addition to the central, was to do exactly that, to engage with those comments that came in, to congratulate when there were mentions, that sort of thing. And I think it's because we have, and particularly Ian has diligently managed that group so that we can get that kind of learning out quickly, that trusted expert thing. We've been able to achieve those kinds of numbers. I guess I realized it was that high, but I sort of skipped over the context, realizing it was particularly high. And so I think it's important to this campus community because it's part of the brand experience here. We are a comprehensive university. We're not a large university. We're not a small liberal arts college. So we can have all of those big opportunities while being at a scale for personal relationship. And so therefore, we have to walk that walk and act it and the whole thing. And so this enables us to do that.
It's really a reflection of your campus culture and the fantastic work that you all are doing in emulating what it's like to be on campus, but in that online space. And that really takes a lot of effort and work and dedication. And that's been a consistent theme from getting to interact with your team over the course of the past year and a half. So lots of examples to model and ideas for other campus pros to really see and try to apply in their own work as well.
And it's interesting. I'm giving a lot of credit to Ian here, but I had a meeting with the leadership team earlier today of the Division of Marketing and Communication. And one of the things we talked about was cross-training and cross-fluency, because it now takes more people to produce a video or a student story or the kinds of things that then generate engagement that give you the opportunity, the surfaces, if you will, to begin to engage. And so it's a virtuous circles kind of thing. And we keep talking about it, and the entire division, some in more ways than others, but has some role to play in this natural extension of the brand. And I would argue social media has come into its own with earned media in terms of it's not like that thing you do on the side. It's such a central component of the overall brand and communication strategy. And we're treating it that way now. So that's a good thing.
And it's another great way to hear directly from your audiences and learn from them and be able to apply those perceptions and questions and input to ensure that the work that's happening is aligning with their needs as well. Well, if anyone out there listening has questions, wants to learn more about our collaboration, get some best practices, guidance from Gabe and his team, or hear directly from Alistair and I, our contact information is available here and will also be a part of the show notes. So thanks for tuning in.